Thank you, Keith. Well, happening at our state capitol today, something called anti-nudification. This is a new bill that's aimed at protecting Minnesotans from AI-generated fake pornographic and nude images. Let's just take a listen because this morning we were able to hear from a victim of this. Let's take a listen.
In June of this past year, I discovered that a friend of 20 years had used my face and widely available deepfake technology to create hyper-realistic pornographic videos and images of me. My initial shock turned to horror when I learned that the same person targeted about 80 to 85 other women, most of whom live in Minnesota, some of whom I know personally, and all of them had connections in some way to the offender. The image she used was from family pictures on basic social media platforms. I was 6 months pregnant at the time, and the crippling stress and anxiety of this event negatively impacted my health, and I worried constantly of the health of my baby. This also negatively affected my work and professional life. I was humiliated and very worried that my employer, my colleagues, clients, and neighbors may have seen these images. Because they were created on the internet, the number of people who had already seen them was unknown. All moments that once felt harmless were now charged with a lot of suspicion and unease. I no longer walked into meetings the same way. I no longer sat on the bus on the way to work wondering if someone had seen me in these images.
And so that was Molly. Standing directly behind her was lawmaker Senator Erin Maye Quade. We want to welcome her to the program now to talk a little bit about this bill and the impact that it's having. Clearly, thanks for being with us. We appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
So let's talk, I guess, step back a little bit and talk about the problem. Molly laid it out there in terms of what's happened to her. It's horrifying to hear her story. What is this problem, and why? How prevalent is it? Why did you feel like this is something you wanted to try to tackle?
Yeah, so right now on any computer or any phone, there are apps, websites, platforms that allow a person to take a picture or a video of someone who is fully clothed and make them naked, or take a video, a pornographic video that already exists, and then take a picture of somebody from their wedding album or from their, family Christmas card and create a new video that puts that person's face that was clothed onto the pornographic video or image. And this is nudification. And so, this again is available on every cell phone, every computer for people of any age. It's available in the Google Store, in the Apple Store. And it's just incredibly, this technology shouldn't exist, and people shouldn't be able to make other people naked and appear to be doing something that they didn't do. And so when these women came to me over the summer, I was horrified that the deepfake sexual imagery law that we passed in 2023 kind of left a loophole, because the deepfake sexual imagery law that we passed prohibited the dissemination of deepfake sexual images, but really the harm comes at creation here. And so we want to go upstream and prohibit companies from allowing the notification functions on apps, platforms, and websites to be turned on.
And Senator, I see this law is targeting those companies. What if there's just a person who's at home and has figured out how to do it on their own without going through one of these companies? Does it affect that person as well?
That's a really good question. I think it's important for folks to know that the kind of technology that is required to do this nudification, a person couldn't do at home. It actually requires a large server. Many of these are outside of the country, algorithmic functions that, many people had to put together and then run through a computer. So sure, somebody at home could do a Photoshop, right? They could Photoshop somebody else's face over a body. But that's very, very different than AI generated pornography and sexual images, because in the AI generation, it's actually using real people and real bodies and real videos that it's been trained on to kind of guess what's underneath a person's clothes and generate that. And so this isn't something that's happening at a person's house with their own computer. It's happening with the integration of a third party, and it's these apps, platforms, and websites that allow notification.
So what's the goal with this bill? What would the penalties be, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so there's two avenues for remedy here. The first is individual. Individuals would have the right to sue through civil law and get restitution. But the second avenue, which I think is really important, is that the Minnesota Attorney General could sue on behalf of the state. And the place I see this maybe happening most often would be, this is happening in schools. Children are downloading these apps, they're nudifying their classmates, their teachers, their siblings, friends. And so principals and superintendents very familiar with this issue. And I could see a world in which a superintendent or a principal would come to the Attorney General and say, look, we have this law, but this app or this platform or this website is being downloaded by our students and they're using it to nudify. And then the Attorney General can pursue damages against that company. The limit, the least amount would be $500,000, so $500,000. It could be a lot more. And we wanted the penalties to be stiff to really incentivize turning off the notification functions.
And what, and I apologize, we've got construction going on here, so if you're hearing noises, that's what that is. So what sort of obstacles do you think you could face running into this? I mean, can trying to regulate tech be this gray area, or do you feel like we've come far enough and this just closes that loophole?
Well, I think it's a good question. I do think that this demands federal action, right? I am but a state senator, and I certainly can help regulate things in the state of Minnesota, but creating a patchwork that there are different rules and regulations across 50 different states is pretty unworkable. And my hope is that, we're contacting legislators in other states so that they can do this in their own state. We have found wide bipartisan support from every part of the political spectrum for this, whether it's in the legislature or from constituents. But this does demand federal action. And I think ultimately I would like to see the federal government pursue something like this. I know that tech billionaires are kind of really excited about the White House right now. And so I don't know if that's deterring any action, but I can tell you that, within the state legislature here, my bill is bipartisan, the work is bipartisan, and I really expect that we'll get something done and hopefully put them on notice that legislators are paying attention and we demand changes.
Okay, I do have one more for you, despite the construction noise here, really important. I want to know what people can do to protect themselves if they see something or if they know that something is happening.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the really scary things about this technology is somebody could take a picture or video of you from, one of your social media profiles, but they could take a picture of you in the grocery store or your kid at the park or, at one of the choir concerts, right? That's one of the most concerning things is that by our very existence in society, just being out in public or being on social media, we have kind of, we've allowed this to proliferate to the point where we could be victims of this. I'm aware that every time I do bills like this, I could potentially become a victim of it. And so, unfortunately, the answer is there's nothing Minnesotans can currently do to protect themselves because this technology just exists and it's legal for anybody to access on a phone or a computer. So my hope is that they'll reach out to their legislators, tell them how important Senate File 1119 is to pass. If folks have experience, they can also reach out and talk a little bit about that so we have more testimony. Megan and Molly, who stepped forward today, are incredibly brave to do so after being victimized by a dear friend. And so I do want Minnesotans to know that we are taking action here at the legislature, but it will take both public pressure and internal education to make sure that that gets over the finish line.
Okay. Senator, thank you so much for joining us. It's live streaming. This is what happens sometimes. Thanks for rolling with us on this very, very serious subject. We appreciate your time. We'll continue to follow this as it goes through the legislature. Take care.
Thanks so much. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
You too.